will inspire many others to do exactly the same thing.
People with ordinary backgrounds doing extraordinary things to save our Earth.
Before the Nobel Peace Prize knew I existed, the Goldman Prize realized I existed.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Douglas E. Goldman of the Goldman Environmental Foundation.
Good evening. On behalf of the board and staff of the Goldman Environmental Foundation, it is my pleasure to welcome all of you to this evening's ceremony. Tonight, we shall award and celebrate 6 new recipients of the Goldman Environmental Prize. Often cited as the Green Nobel, this prize is an enduring testimony to its founders, my parents, Richard and Rhoda Goldman of blessed memory. On this, the 30th anniversary of the prize, we will have awarded 194 individuals from 89 different countries. They all have one thing in common: notable actions undertaken to protect this planet and its species from degradation and destruction. Reflecting upon these past 30 years, what have been some of the major environmental achievements in which Goldman Prize winners have played a central role? Number 1, species extinctions have been stopped throughout planet Earth. This includes the restoring of iconic endangered species like black rhinos, mountain gorillas, and endangered cats. Secondly, a palpable shift to renewable energy has occurred. People are choosing sustainable practices to supplant destructive methods. Examples include major advances in solar and wind power creation, as well as electric and hybrid vehicles. Third, there has been active protection of the natural ecology of our planet. Actions taken include the removal of old dams and the banning of offshore drilling. Fourth, environmental awareness is more prevalent throughout the globe. Commentary spawned by Vice President Al Gore's An Inconvenient Truth and the Earth Summits of 1992 and 2012 have raised environmental awareness and resulted in significant action. Unfortunately, before we become too complacent while patting ourselves on our collective back, we must recognize that the threats to our planet's well-being are both unprecedented and accelerating. Turning our view to the next 30 years, what are the most important challenges threatening our world's environmental health? Firstly, pollution resulting from industrial and consumer waste remains a major challenge. This threat includes the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, a collection of plastic the size of the state of Texas that has been dumped into the Pacific Ocean, and a newly discovered pollutant called microplastics, which have been found in unacceptable quantities in pristine environments like the Pyrenees Mountains of Europe. 2, deforestation, which has commonly resulted from extractive mining for minerals, along with oil and gas exploration, and also large expanses of monocrop plantations, such as palm oil plantations. Third, and I've saved the worst threat for last, namely climate change. The signs of our changing climate have become too obvious to deny. Changes that include melting polar ice caps, rising sea levels, extraordinarily destructive wildfires and fire tornadoes, massive hurricanes, unprecedented flooding, and increasingly hotter temperatures. In the United States in 2018, there were 13 weather disasters, each of which destroyed over $1 billion in property. A famous American made the following remark: restoring nature to its natural state is a cause beyond party and beyond factions. It is a cause of particular concern to young Americans because they, more than we, will reap the grim consequences of our failure to act on programs which are needed now if we are to prevent disaster later. Through our years of past carelessness, we incurred a debt to nature, and now that debt is being called. So I ask, by whom and when were those comments made? You were correct if you stated President Richard Nixon in his 1970 State of the Union address. Clearly, those same comments could have been made today, but not by the current president. Richard Nixon was the first president of the United States of America to resign from office as he faced certain impeachment and conviction for the obstruction of justice. Sadly, nearly a half century later, we again have a president who has obstructed justice and may well face impeachment and possible conviction. But unlike Richard Nixon, Donald Trump has been attempting to move the environmental clock backwards, whether it be his attempts to remove our nation from the global effort to address climate change or dismantle the Environmental Protection Agency, the very agency that Richard Nixon started to launch with that State of the Union address. Trump's innumerable reckless actions are neither acceptable nor supportable. Much has been accomplished over these past 30 years. Add to that list the astounding recent election of 2016 Goldman Prize winner Zuzana Kapitova as president of the nation of Slovakia. Nevertheless, our call to environmental action is more needed than ever. We must reverse our perilous course. As our friend, Goldman Prize winner Berta Cáceres of blessed memory said, "We have no other spare or replacement planet. We have only this one, and we have to take action." Once again, welcome. Thank you very much. It is now my pleasure to introduce you to the MC for tonight's ceremony. A descendant of one of our planet's most famous families fighting to protect our oceans. Her surname represents a true environmental legacy. She began swimming before learning to walk in her native south of France. Today, she is recognized as a great advocate for those oceans that nurtured her. Please give a warm welcome to Alexandra Cousteau.
Good evening, and Doug, thank you for that kind introduction. I'm incredibly honored to be here hosting the 30th anniversary of the Goldman Environmental Prize at the San Francisco Opera House, and I'd like to welcome everyone watching on YouTube. Let me also welcome our special guests, the Honorable Al Gore, Michael Franti, and Vocal Rush. This ceremony is a highlight for all of us who care about our planet and work to protect it. Thank you to the Goldman family for sharing this wonderful evening with all of us. The Goldman Environmental Prize is truly unique. The environmental heroes you'll meet tonight are extraordinary human beings. They have done nothing less than change the world. They persist and never stop fighting for a better planet. These are people who have stared down adversity, overwhelming odds, powerful foes, and not blinked. They have often risked everything they have and never taken no for an answer. Over the past 30 years, the prize has been awarded to 194 men and women at the forefront of protecting our environment. They motivate all of us to do what we can in our own communities to protect the planet. This evening, we honor 6 amazing individuals from around the world. While their cultures, customs, and languages may be different, they all share a common goal. Each has stepped up to speak out, organize their communities, and take action against the destruction of our environment. The recipients remind us that it takes just one person standing up to start a movement. In addition to awarding the prize, the Goldman Environmental Foundation supports all prize winners, past and present, in a number of ways. We provide grants to past prize winners to advance key projects. We offered networking and capacity building support to further work in their communities. And, perhaps most importantly, we provide security and emergency support for prize winners who are at risk or under threat. Also, when prize winners come to San Francisco each year from their own countries, they embark on a 10-day tour that concludes in Washington, D.C. During this time, they widen their exposure and impact through media interviews, meetings with funders, nonprofit leaders, and elected officials. In addition to being treated to a well-deserved break from their hard work, they also participate in a tree planting event with young environmental leaders at Crissy Field. As we celebrate 30 years, it gives us a chance to look back at some of the environmental heroes who have received the Goldman Prize and share some of their important moments.
In 1977, when we planted 7 trees, many people thought that we were joking because we were just a bunch of women. Many years later, we are talking about millions of trees, and some people have started taking women seriously after all.
No child should have to go to school 1,100 feet from a toxic waste incinerator, and no president should allow it.
We will not continue to sacrifice our culture, our people, and our future for dirty energy.
We are in this battle because we want the global community to know that our territory is not to be treated as a dumping site.
That our survival as communities, as states, as a nation, as a human race depends on our ability to mobilize.
This is what we fight for. It's about life, it's about colors, it's about people, it's about rights and justice.
We must work together for the good of all people.
It comes from pulling each other up on this journey and leave our children the planet that they deserve.
The earth is not ours. It is a treasure we hold in trust for the future generations.
Now allow me to recognize the members of the Goldman family who lead the foundation and shape the vision of the prize. Susie Gelman, John Goldman, and Doug Goldman. Would you please stand so we can recognize you? Thank you for carrying on the leadership and legacy of your wonderful parents, Richard and Rhoda Goldman, who launched the prize in 1989. And now it is my pleasure and privilege to introduce our keynote speaker this evening, a man who in recent years has devoted his time to solving the climate crisis, the 45th Vice President of the United States, the Honorable Al Gore.
Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Bless you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the warmth of that welcome. And Alexandra, thank you for being such a wonderful host for us this evening. And thank you. This is in some ways a family-oriented event. I'm going to talk about the Goldman family in a moment, but I want to make reference to the Cousteau family. Thank you, Alexandra. And I had the privilege of working with your dad and working with your grandfather, in particular, in helping to try and protect the Antarctic Ocean and on other matters. But let me focus, before I launch into my brief comments here, on the Goldman family. I had the great privilege of being close with Richard and Rhoda. And what they started in 1989 has now grown into a ceremony and a set of awards each year that really and truly represents the primary environmental set of awards in the entire world. And I want to congratulate this year's 6 winners. Your names will be called out individually, and your stories will be told, and I'm not going to encroach on that process by acknowledging you individually because you deserve your moment in the spotlight here as they have planned it. But I do want to give you a bit of advice, each of the 6 of you. Your lives will change this evening, because after tonight, you will forever after be known as winners of the Goldman Prize. And that's something very special. I want to thank Susie Gelman and John Goldman and Doug Goldman. And Doug, thank you. Your remarks were outstanding earlier. This generation has actually taken their parents' vision, built on it, elevated it, and made it even more special if that were possible. I'm not going to acknowledge individually the next generation, but I know who you are, and I've worked with the next generation also, and you know, whenever the time comes, you're going to see this Goldman Prize continue to build and grow, and I'm very excited about that as well. I'm honored to be a part of this program. You're going to get entertained by Michael Franti and the Vocal Rush later, so you're in for a real treat there too. And Michael Franti is a good friend and has helped me with the Climate Reality Project over the years, as the Goldman family has, and I'm very grateful for that. So let me say just a few words. Time's running out. There's still enough time. Don't lose hope. We're going to prevail. We are not yet winning, but we will win. We will win. We must win. We have to win. We are not yet developing solutions to the climate crisis and the larger ecological crisis of which it is the most salient manifestation, but the momentum is building, and it's building in part because of the recognition and focus on the women and men who are calling our attention to the most important manifestations of this crisis in their local communities. I remember vividly, this video that we saw earlier that highlighted the women recipients of the prize over these last 30 years began with Wangari Maathai. She was a dear friend, and I met her in the late 1980s in Kenya. I was so thrilled, really, when she was one of the very first winners of the Goldman Prize, and I think that the skill with which this selection process chooses men and women who are recipients has been one of the great secrets to why this prize has achieved the prominence and respect that it has earned over the years. But what these women and men are telling us is that the collision between human civilization as we have presently organized it and the surprisingly fragile ecological system of the earth is creating great pain and distress. The past 5 years have been the hottest 5 years on record. Last year, all-time record high temperatures were experienced in more than 200 cities on every continent. Already 84 records have been broken this year. Recently, in the last week, we saw the highest temperature ever achieved in several countries. In the last 2 years, for those who are focused on the economy and the economic impacts of what we're experiencing, there have been more than $500 billion in losses from climate-related events just in the last 2 years. And we are in danger of crossing some dangerous thresholds, but we are also very close to crossing a tipping point in the political and social realm, beyond which it will be easier to mobilize public movements to change the policies that need to be changed. I'm inspired by the grassroots activism that is being honored in the 6 prizes this year, and that has been honored in the prizes in each of the previous 29 years in which the Goldman Prize has been awarded. If the rest of us had been able to pay closer attention to the damage cited and the alarm bells sounded by the grassroots activists who are among the first to really experience and call attention to what's going on, we would be farther along the road to solving the climate crisis and the ecological crisis than we are. But I truly believe we are very close to this political tipping point. And if you look back, and many are familiar with this narrative, every single social and moral movement that has improved the condition of humanity has in its time been confronted with obstacles and resistance that seemed insurmountable. But once their activity, the activity of these grassroots activists, succeeded in clearing away the distractions and the underbrush, if you will, and revealing the central choice between right and wrong, then the conscience of humanity was activated. This was true of the abolition movement. It was true of the women's suffrage movement. It was true of the civil rights movement. It was true of the anti-apartheid movement. It was true during the nuclear freeze years. It was true more recently during the gay and lesbian rights movement. And if someone had told me even 10 years ago that in the year 2019, marriage equality would be legal in all 50 states in the United States, I would have said, I hope so, but I don't think that's likely. But it happened because people's awareness and consciousness was raised. And by the way, this city played such a key role in bringing that revolution to pass. And now we are close to the tipping point on climate. The central question is it right or is it wrong to persist and continue in a pattern of activity that destroys the basis of human civilization and in the process leads to the sixth great extinction and the disappearance of more than half of all the living species with which we share this planet? The answer appears to be obvious, but in each of the previous movements I mentioned, the answer appeared to be painfully, excruciatingly obvious to activists and grassroots activists much longer before it was apparent to everyone. That is where we are right now. But the role of grassroots activists, which every single year is honored and celebrated and recognized by the Goldman Prizes, is right at the center of the process by which humanity advances. We see this now with Greta Thunberg in Sweden and the school strike movement. We see this with the Extinction Rebellion in the United Kingdom and elsewhere. We see it with Zero Hour. We see it with a whole host of movements. As is true with so many of the previous movements I mentioned, youth have played a particular role. And there is, I want to single out again a growing climate justice movement within frontline communities that I have had the honor of working with, particularly recently. The cause for social justice is just as important, if not more so, as it was 50 years ago. We see it with young students and women and men marching in favor of sensible gun laws, in the Black Lives Matter movement, in the movement for trans rights, and the movement against gender discrimination. A shift is underway. So when you celebrate and applaud the incredible achievements of these women and men being honored tonight, please remember how their lives and their energy, their hearts, their passion fit into this larger narrative of humanity attempting to achieve a just relationship between our species and the ecological system upon which we depend and upon which so many other species depend. And if anyone is tempted for one moment to despair, tempted for 1 second to the idea that we may be doomed, we may not have the ability as human beings to rise up in time, to summon sufficient energy and motivation to do what is essential, just remember that the passion for social justice, the passion for environmental justice, the passion for change, the passion to do the right thing is itself a sustainable resource. Thank you very much, and congratulations to all of the award winners. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gore. So in addition to a cash award, tonight's prize winners receive a statue of the Ouroboros, a serpent biting its own tail, representing nature's power of renewal. Presenting the Ouroboros is Susie Gelman, president of the Goldman Environmental Foundation. Ladies and gentlemen, let's meet the heroes that we are celebrating tonight.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Robert Redford. I regret I'm not able to join you this evening for the 30th anniversary celebration. It's been a pleasure for me to work with the prize for the past 16 years, and it's my honor to introduce you to the winners of the 2019 Goldman Environmental Prize. The city of Vancouver, Washington, has always prospered as a shipping hub for the Pacific Northwest booming lumber industry, but has also been challenged by higher unemployment and homeless rates than neighboring Portland, Oregon. When Tesoro Oil, a Texas-based conglomerate, proposed a $210 million project at the Port of Vancouver in 2013, it was met with a warm welcome.
This is a significant boon to the community. It will create jobs.
Talking with the commissioners at the time, they were very excited. We heard the PR spiel for it. It sounded really good. Jobs, jobs, jobs is what we heard. But then some things started coming into play that didn't sound so good.
As Linda Garcia and her associates began to ask questions about what kind of jobs would be created and how long they might last, the answers weren't satisfying. More importantly, the group began researching the potential health hazards of the largest oil terminal in North America, while the Port Commission made its decision.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
The idea that something so large with every possible type of risk, from accidents there at the terminal during transfer to an oil spill in the river to the potential of an oil train spill, derailment, or explosion like we saw in Mosier, Oregon. And the biggest of the concerns, for me anyway, was the moment that terminal would have gone online every single day of the year, poisons and toxins and cancerous chemical substances would have been in the air, and we all have been breathing them in. I could stand on my doorstep and see the Port of Vancouver, and I wasn't going to let a company come in to my neighborhood and steamroll over people. And so, you know, holding the neighborhood meetings and going to the Port Commission and testifying to them why we didn't want this to happen.
Please don't gamble with our futures or that of our children.
Meeting with the Port Commissioners one-on-one.
Well, even worse is a closed door to communication.
While Linda was in the throes of fighting what she thought was the biggest battle in her life, she received a medical diagnosis that forced her to battle on another front.
Then things got really bad, And so I didn't really have a choice, and I had to start going to chemotherapy. But I couldn't let it stop me because I felt this sense that I was going to be letting people down if I didn't keep fighting.
Linda persevered through treatments while attending countless community meetings, as well as local and statewide hearings.
This is about protecting people and precious resources which we all utilize.
Linda confronted lawmakers at every level of government for 3 long years, until finally, Washington's Energy Facility Evaluation Council issued an environmental impact statement that the Tesoro project posed significant harm to the community.
I move that the council recommend disapproval of the proposed Vancouver Energy Distribution Terminal.
Linda's fight culminated in Governor Jay Inslee's decision to deny the permits to build the largest oil terminal in North America in her community. A month later, the Port of Vancouver canceled Tesoro Oil's lease on the property.
It feels amazing because we all had the experience of glee and joy and happiness, but we also all know that it's not over.
We're standing together for healthy communities and a healthy climate.
It was so many thousands of other people that stood up and fought, and we were foot soldiers in this battle.
You need to care for the children. I'll see ya. Thank you.
Looking back, it doesn't seem as hard when you realize that there were so many people there with me. I'm in the Pacific Northwest. Mountains everywhere, forests, wilderness areas where I can re-find my strength so that I can get back to who I truly am and get rid of a lot of the anger, the fear, the worry. This is my chapel, and this is where I remind myself that this is what the earth is supposed to be like. And so I need to recreate that inside of myself for when I go back down into the city and get back at it again.
For outstanding environmental achievement for North America, the 2019 Goldman Environmental Prize is awarded to Linda Garcia, Vancouver, Washington.
Thank you so much. I want to express my deepest thanks to the Goldman Environmental Foundation and family. I am so humbled, honored, and a little overwhelmed by all of this. I deeply appreciate your recognition of my work. Although I am the one standing up here, I am fully cognizant of the fact that I could never have achieved this without the support and hard work of an entire community, many of whom I now consider family. I am so privileged to live in the Pacific Northwest region of the United States, an area of unparalleled beauty and ecological diversity. A few weeks ago, when finding myself in need of some respite and recharging, I hiked one of my favorite trails in the Mount Hood Wilderness, my resplendent sanctuary. As I looked up at larger-than-life glaciers and then down at the mighty Columbia River, the realization of what I have known intrinsically since I was a young child was suddenly crystal clear. Our Earth is fragile. I feel a sense of urgency today. There is a general apathy toward preserving our natural resources, air, water, plants, and animals, all of which contribute to our continued survival. This has led to unprecedented destruction that has been heralded by our most respected experts, yet largely ignored by our policymakers. Our temperatures are rising, our winters are becoming harsher. Our natural world is rebelling against the unbearable strain we have put upon it. The mountain air of my sanctuary is filled with the subtle but visible fog of pollution. My mountain's glaciers are shrinking at a rapid pace. The pristine wilderness I've known for most of my life is disappearing before my eyes. I fear this place will not be here for my children. For 5 long years, I fought the building of what would have been North America's largest oil terminal. We won that battle, but we have not won the war. We still rely far too heavily on fossil fuels, and unless we react with something other than complacency toward climate change, we will hit our tipping point of no return sooner than anticipated. We must act now. I'm sorry. Throughout my years of activism, I have fought for our planet in the face of relentless bullying, intimidation, and threats. Sorry. Despite my fear, I press on because I know that our time is almost up. I persist, along with others who risk their lives and livelihoods every day in facing head-on the threat to human rights posed by corporations who put profit before people. Saving our planet is hard work, but it is not impossible. I need your help in educating those who most need to hear our Earth's dying rally cry. I need your help in eliminating continuous environmental injustices created by big oil and fossil fuel industries. I need your help in cleaning our waters, planting new trees, marching for focus on climate change, and calling out corporate greed that exists only for the benefit of a chosen few. Let's make our voices heard. No act is too small. Every step we take to protect our planet, no matter how seemingly minute, is a gesture of bravery. I will persevere. Will you? Thank you.
Liberia has some of the richest forest lands in Western Africa, but also has a troubled economic and political history. When Ellen Sirleaf Johnson took office as Africa's first female president 13 years ago, one of her goals was to capitalize on the country's precious forests that had been safeguarded for centuries by the indigenous people in the remote Sino County region of Liberia.
For indigenous people, a forest is more than just the physical land or the physical trees. It's their way of life. It is their supermarket, it's their hospital. It is everything to them.
Alfred Brownell, an attorney and law professor, together with his Green Advocates organization, agreed to mitigate the conflict between the native people and Golden Beryllium, an international palm oil conglomerate. The company had forcefully established palm oil plantations by clearing indigenous people's lands without notice, consent, or compensation. In the process, the company had polluted local water sources, cleared community forests, and destroyed the tribe's sacred sites.
If you stood in the village, you just see the massive oil palm. I was shocked. Centuries of history and culture. The company replaced that with an oil palm operation. They were harassing them. They were intimidating them. They were arresting them. So the first thing I had to do was to give them hope, to stand up and fight for that forest.
Alfred and his team filed a complaint with the Roundtable for Sustainable Palm Oil and documented the numerous ways in which Golden Beryllium was violating the standards that had been established for sustainable certification. But Alfred was soon faced with a confrontation for which his law studies could never have prepared him. A blockade in the middle of a palm oil plantation was the setting for a hostile band of Golden Beryllium employees with machetes, threatening Alfred with brutally ending his life. Then the village chief intervened with the attackers.
He said, this blood that you want to waste, you can put this blood on this land. So you have to take him to another town and kill him. I told the driver, let's go. And we fled the area.
Alfred's bravery and determination resulted in the Roundtable for Sustainable Palm Oil issuing a stop work order on Golden Beryllium because of the numerous violations that green advocates had listed in their complaint filing. Chief among those violations was that Golden Beryllium had not received the consent of the indigenous people to turn their forests into palm oil plantations.
When I got the news that their rights were being restored now to protect this forest and protect the people who live in this forest for generations to come, I was overwhelmed and I cried.
After the decision in favor of the native people, Alfred's safety and security were jeopardized, even in his home in Monrovia. A warrant for his arrest was issued that quickly turned into a manhunt that he barely escaped with his wife and children.
It was the toughest decision that Alfred ever made. And I can tell you, even when Alfred succeeded, even in leaving the country, Alfred's goal was to instantly come back. So, Alfred left with a very heavy heart.
Alfred and his family are living in exile in the United States. He's a visiting environmental and human rights law professor at Northeastern University in Boston. He publicly speaks out at schools, churches, and community groups to focus attention on protecting Liberian forests from being exploited further by encroaching industries.
I had to pull my family off. I had to tear my children away. Whenever I talk to the indigenous people who I work with, I really miss them. I have made up my mind that even with the gun at my face, I will do this a million times. I am not afraid. I am prepared and I have no regret.
For outstanding environmental achievement for Africa, the 2019 Goldman Environmental Prize is awarded to Alfred Brownell, Sinoe County, Liberia.
I stand before you tonight because of a mixture of luck, my Christian faith, the protection of Mother Nature, and the shield of our ancestors. Yes, I survived to tell this story. But many defenders around the world who are part of our community murder at the rate of 4 per week have not been so lucky. This victory was possible only because we built an army of local and international NGOs.
My appreciation first is to my beautiful wife, Bessie Brownell, who's been my hero, my kids, Conan, Alfred Jr., and Kiddo Brownell. I also want to extend appreciation to the Goldman Environmental Foundation, Rights International, Northeastern University, Fund for Global Human Rights, Advocate for Community Alternative, Global Witness, Forest People's Program, Green Advocate, Sustainable Development Initiative, and so many other organizations that I cannot name here. This honor will, I hope, elevate the status of the lungs of West and North Africa. Don't clap, act. And the struggle of communities protecting this forest. And I hope it will help the global community to better understand the danger of palm oil. Don't clap, act. Unsustainable palm oil, which I refer to as the Frankenstein palm oil, is a major cause of environmental destruction, deforestation, ethnic cleansing, human rights violation, and economic exploitation in Liberia and elsewhere. I mount this stage tonight as a messenger from the indigenous people and local forest communities of Liberia with a request and a message. I'm here, among others, to talk about Ma Ana Tu. Ma Ana Tu, an indigenous Kru woman leader from Liberia, a grandmother who was flogged, stripped completely naked, and thrown onto the back of a police jeep and in prison. Her only crime being to protect her customary land. She wants me to say that despite the threats she faced, all hope is not lost. But it is time. It is time to commit to protecting the tropical forests of West Africa, which is still under serious threat from commercial oil palm. It is time. It is time to invest in community-driven innovations and business models designed by indigenous people who have coexisted with nature for centuries. Don't clap, act. Don't clap, act. It is time. It is time to rethink development and investment. We too, said indigenous people, are investors and development experts. And very successful one at it too. What was done in my community, says Ma Ana Tu, was called development, supported by foreign direct investment. But this model destroyed everything in its path. The forest, the water, the agriculture, and the vast carbon sink, not to mention centuries of history and sacred tradition. It is time to call on BlackRock. BlackRock, Nestle, pension fund, endowment fund, and banks to start financing destructive investment that threaten people and the planet. It is time. It is time. Don't clap, act. Don't clap, act. Don't clap, act. It is time. It is time to look at the palm oil beneath the label and brands. When you walk into a grocery store, you hardly notice this destruction. It is hiding behind the labels and the brand. So when you are enjoying snacks, ice cream, candy, applying lipstick, nail polish. It is important to remember the consequences across the world, all of your view. Do not forget what happened to Ma Anatu, that grandmother. We need to become better educated about products that contain palm oil with better labeling, stronger regulation, and a direct understanding of cause and effect. Do not forget, it is the forest that produces oxygen that gave us life. Next time, my dear, when any of you walk out of your door, give a tree a loving, tender hug. Please act now and do something before it is too late. If we did it, you can do it also. It is time. It is time. Thank you.
Don't clap.
Don't clap, act. Don't clap, act.
In 1952, the national government built a massive hydroelectric dam in Mavrovo National Park. The project completely devastated the region, displacing a community of shepherds and farmers and submerging the church that was the central hub for the community.
At that time, Mavrovo was basically a group of settlements where people lived as shepherds. But this is a very clear example of how large dams can impact both cultural heritage and natural heritage.
Anna Cholovish-Lisowska, a biologist, was surprised to learn that the government was planning to repeat its mistake by developing two major dams that would once again be built within Mavrovo National Park. Anna and her organization, Ecosvest, began investigating the impact of the proposed dams and became alarmed.
Dams are not sustainable projects. Macedonia is blessed with 280 days of sun in the year, which means that we have huge potential to use solar power. So the whole idea of building hydropower plants in a national park, for me, was insane.
Then Anna's alarm turned to outrage when Ecosvest's research indicated that the proposed dams would not only impact the park, but threaten the habitat of the critically endangered Balkan lynx.
When I realized that the Balkan lynx is at stake, I felt really triggered to stop these crazy plans and to do everything in my power to preserve the population of this critically endangered species. We have around 40 of the Balkan lynx left, and it is very important to protect its critical habitat.
But Anna and Ecosvest had some formidable adversaries. Not just the Macedonian government, but the World Bank and the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development had already approved the projects.
We were at the very beginning skeptical because the loans were granted and the decisions were made. However, we strongly believe that environmental protection should be paramount in any decision making.
Anna filed complaints against all of the stakeholders in the project and began to forge strategic partnerships with government officials and environmental organizations. Then she petitioned the Berne Convention, an international treaty that safeguards environmental accountability among member nations.
We also participated in public hearings to convey our concern to the institutions. And with the support of 119 scientists from all over the world, we gathered more than 100,000 signatures for the protection of the Balkan links.
For 4 long years, Anna persisted with her multifaceted campaign. Then the dominoes started to fall in Ecosvest's favor. First, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development issued a finding that the bank had breached its own procedures when it endorsed the projects. Then the Bern Convention responded to Ecosvest's complaint, indicating that the hydropower plants should be stopped and encouraging the funders to withdraw. Soon, the World Bank did exactly that.
This was a major success for us. We managed to stop 2 large dams from happening. But for me, the fight is not over. My country has a responsibility to the world to protect this species. We really need to make sure that its habitat is purely intact.
For outstanding environmental achievement in Europe, the 2019 Goldman Environmental Prize is awarded to Anna Čolović-Lesovska, Mavrovo National Park, North Macedonia.
Thank you. Good evening. Let me express my gratitude towards the Goldman family and congratulate them on the 30th anniversary of the award. I would also like to thank my family for the immense support over the years, my colleagues at Ecosvest, CE Bankwatch Network, and also at the Macedonian Ecological Society and Front 2142 for their outstanding work. Nature is our home. It is the source of all resources. Designate natural habitats as protected areas so we can preserve their value and so we can educate the public and our leaders in the process. These protected areas also demonstrate that humans can indeed live with nature without harming it. For me, the National Park of Mavrovo is an area that shows the connectivity of people and nature. And as we decide to protect natural habitats to support the survival of species, we cannot simultaneously undermine these environments. Building hydropower projects in protected areas is not contributing to the protection of wildlife, and therefore these projects should never be allowed. This madness of the hydro rush is not only happening in my country. Many countries that dream of joining the European Union are catching this disease and building hydropower projects under the guise of meeting renewable energy targets required by the EU. The Western Balkans are simply flooded with proposed projects, more than 2,700 of them. In nearby Georgia, the government plans an estimated 150 hydropower projects, including the $1 billion Nenskra Dam, a project that poses massive risks on par with those we fought against in Mavrovo. It is alarming that the international financial institutions support projects that harm the natural habitats in our region. Public banks, like the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development and the World Bank Group, have supported the construction of hydropower plants in the Balkans directly or indirectly, and at least 1/3 of their projects ended up in areas of high biodiversity. This practice cannot be the way towards achieving long-term conservation goals and reducing the pressure on biodiversity and ecosystems. Financial institutions must adopt stronger policies and regulations to prevent damage to our natural habitats and species. National governments have the responsibility to the world to adopt wildlife protection programs for species with critical status, such as the Balkan lynx. To support our work in protecting our rivers and natural habitats, please sign our petitions. Building awareness about how public money destroys our planet is important worldwide. You can also ask your elected officials if US policy and funding are actually supporting harmful projects in the developing world. Protecting nature is key to our survival. The question remains, if not us, who? If not now, when? Thank you.
Thank you. And congratulations to the first 3 winners of the 2019 Goldman Environmental Prize. Hearing the stories of the Goldman Environmental Prize recipients reminds us of our own responsibility to inspire and educate the next generation of young environmentalists among us. Tonight, we are proudly hosting more than 500 Bay Area environmental youth leaders, students, and activists who will help carry the torch. As we've seen around the world in recent months, young people truly have the potential to change our world for the better. Please join me now in welcoming our very special performers, Michael Franti, performing his newly released song, The Flower, with Oakland's very own Vocal Rush.
I said, how you feeling? All right. Thank you, Alexandra. We're very excited to be here today, to be performing at the Goldman Awards. This is my second time being here. And the first time I was so inspired by all the recipients, but also by the commitment of the Goldman family, because 30 years ago when they started this, it wasn't quite as sexy to be an environmentalist as it is today. So I want to say thank you to the Goldman family for making environmentalism so sexy. When I was a kid, I was born in Oakland, California. My mother is Irish, German, and Belgian, and my birth father is African American and Nottoway Indian from the mountains of Virginia. And I was adopted at birth by the Franti family, who were second-generation immigrants from Finland. And they came to this country seeking a better life, just like so many millions of families have for generations and decades, and still do today. When they were students at UC Berkeley, they already had 3 kids of their own. And one day my mom went to church and heard there was 190,000 children in need of adoption. So she went home to Mr. Franti and said, Charlie, I know we already get 3 kids of our own and we're living in married student housing, but I think we should adopt another one. And that was me. They got me. They got me. So I grew up in this really mixed, melting pot of a family, and just to round things out, I have one sister who's a lesbian and one brother who's a police officer. Typical Bay Area family. And I would get picked on a lot as a kid. And the song that we want to play for you is a song that I wrote that's about bullying. But more than that, it's a song that's about standing up for yourselves and for our nation, for our planet. And it's a song that says that every single one of us, no matter what walk of life, can be a part of the healing that our world needs today. And I'm happy to be joined by the Oakland School of the Arts Choir. And this is a song that's also a song that's about gun violence. And when I made the video for it, I traveled around the country speaking to families who'd been affected by gun violence. And I went to Parkland High School, among many other places. And I went into Miss Ivy's class. And she had 4 children who were shot in her class. And that day, she was teaching a class, actually her class, the whole semester was about the Holocaust. That day she had a Holocaust survivor in the classroom who's 90 years old. He said something to me that I will never ever forget for as long as I live. When he finally secured his freedom from Auschwitz and went back to his village, he was one of only 50 survivors of 2,000 people who had went there. And he said for the whole first year he cried. He cried morning, noon, and night, until eventually he started to heal from it. And he said to me, Michael, from great pain comes great healing. And therefore, no pain should ever be wasted. No pain should ever be wasted. And so I want to say to everyone here, take the pain that you see that is affecting our planet and the world today. Take the pain that is in your heart and use it for good. Use it to put a flower in the gun. Use it to make sure that this generation here has a head start in making sure that our planet can be 100% renewable energy for 100% of the world's population. We can be the healing when you're feeling all alone. We can be the reason to find the strength to carry on. In a world that's so divided, we shall overcome. We can be the healing. We can be the flower in the gun. We can be the healing. We can be the flower in the gun. What could I say to my son or to my daughter if they came and asked me about these days? What kind of reason could I give for all the hate that's standing in the way? Wish I could tell them that nobody's gonna judge them, and every stranger on the block is gonna love them. No bully in the world could ever hurt them, but I can't say that today. No, no. No one could ever take your pride from you. Speak your truth and let your spirit fly. 'Cause we could be the healing when you're feeling all alone. We could be the reason to find the strength to carry on. In a world that's so divided, we shall overcome. We could be the healing. We could be the flower in the gun. We could be the healing. We could be the flower in the gun.
Too high. What could I say to every girl who was betrayed and told to keep the pain locked inside? Wish I can say nobody's ever gonna judge me. Every stranger on the block is gonna love me. No bully in the world is gonna hurt me, but I can't say that today. No, no, no one could ever take my pride from me. Yeah. Speak my truth and let my spirit. Put your hands together now, 'cause we could be the healing. When you're feeling all alone, we could be the reason